UConn men's head coach states that if Zach Edey isn't a lottery pick and a tremendous NBA player, then something is severely wrong with the NBA. This kind of drew a bigger question into my mind is with Zach Edey coming in and just, the culture of the NBA just constantly switching around, could we possibly see the return of the traditional big?
No. Simple answer, in my opinion.
Yes.
Really? Explain.
I mean, I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but in everything, right, in history, we know that things repeat themselves. And I do think that there is a strong push in the NBA right now of a lot of shooting and a lot of high-paced offense and shooting beyond the arc and everything like that. But what does that do, right? That just leaves rooms for gaps. So when one thing excels, something else is going to be lacking or not being paid attention to as much. So if you can sneak a really efficient big down there and he can get buckets, why wouldn't you do that? Especially when they're keeping the games close or winning championships like in Nikola Jokic's case. So to me, I think that it's kind of just the law of how things go, right? If there's more people taking threes, then there's more of a gap opening in the paint, and so that will be filled, and that will become the next thing that grows until that gets too dominant, and then we switch back to a style of ball that's more three centered. Yeah, I think that's kind of the area that we're going. So I do think we'll return to the traditional big. How long will that last? Who knows? Probably not long.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I think of like NBA bigs in the league and how they're just like diffused, I kind of went with like I consider a traditional big different than like a lob threat big. So like I think a traditional big would be like Zubats or like Jakob Pertl maybe. Then like there's like the lob threat bigs, which would be like Derek Lively, Rudy Gobert. And then the stretch bigs are like Miles Turner, Chet, Brook Lopez, like centers like that. So when I think of traditional bigs, the two I listed, I guess, were Jakob Pertl, because there's not a lot of them, in my opinion, but the better ones, Jakob Pertl is on a bad team this year, the Toronto Raptors, and Zubats is the fourth option on the Clippers right now. I just don't think there's a lot of value in traditional bigs compared to pretty much anything else. And I don't consider Zach Edey really mobile enough to be a lob threat either. Like, obviously, he's like 7'4", he's going to be a lob threat, but like not a pick and roll mobile lob threat. So, especially with the speed of the game, I don't really see a return happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think with the game, like in the NBA, like the way it's going, we're seeing a lot of the teams being focused on getting that big like Wemby that's able to space the floor, able to shoot it from beyond the arc and stuff like that. And with Zach Edey, I think it's gonna take a couple years for him in the NBA to develop, to get used to the game speed of the NBA, because every level you go up in your professional career, it's going to get faster, the game's going to be quicker, he's going to have tougher opponents to guard in the NBA, and teams are going to be able to figure out how to stop him easily, because right now he doesn't have that mid-range shot or three-point shot, so does most of his work in the paint. I think if he could develop a lot of like better footwork and have a lot of variety in his moves in the post, I think he could end up being a really good player for a certain team, whatever team he lands on. And I think just getting quicker with his ability to do pick and rolls defensively, I think he could be something in the league. But right now, I think it's going to take a while for him to adjust.
So within the past few years, we've kind of just seen like basically the whole league trying to formulate what the Warriors pioneered, basically, which is living and dying by the three-point shot. And the rest of the league has caught up, I believe. Just watching games in general, we see a lot of teams just run a lot of offensive sets where the main purpose is a three-point play, and damn near anybody in your starting lineup in most teams can shoot that three-point shot. So this is kind of just like I said earlier, just culture switch and the switch in style of play. Now, could I see the traditional big come back and have more of them in the league and on teams? I definitely think so. But I don't think we will ever see a team centered around a traditional big and try to win a championship that way. For the simple fact that, yeah, the game has changed and it's not as efficient anymore. But within the next few years, we possibly could see, like Daniel said earlier, history repeat itself a little bit and have a traditional big be a like very solid role player on the team, but not so much them being like the centerpiece of your franchise and winning off that, because I don't believe it's sustainable or efficient.
One thing I should have like thought about before I gave my answer is the fact of how the question is worded, right? So it's traditional big. So when I think about the question, I guess not that it's a bad question, but if I was thinking about the question, right, I would maybe say that the NBA could be moving in a position that is more center related or like center oriented in a way. Just kind of playing the offense through these guys that have just insane ball IQ and yeah, really good hands. I mean, like I said, we've seen it with Wemby. Giannis is not a great example of that, but he is even someone that is efficient and someone that they play around. So yeah, I do see it as something that has a lot of potential. But like Kevin said, when we're talking about traditional bigs, we'll probably never see that happen again. I guess I would agree with that.
Yeah, I was gonna just make the point quickly that as I think the game is shifting even farther away from traditional bigs, and one of the takes I saw on it was by Alex Hoops on YouTube. Shout out Alex Hoops. He said that Mark Daigneault, the Thunder head coach, is currently up for Coach of the Year, potentially going to win it this year, and he has one of the most innovation-based offenses in the league by using Chet. And Chet is like, I know we see Wemby, but we could group Wemby and Chet in the same category. But these are centers who really are not stocky. They're extremely mobile, and they're like stretch bigs to an extreme almost. And centering, like Chet is the piece that put the Thunder over the top this year. And I really think that teams are going to start trying to replicate something like that. But I just think that's like an interesting take, that as the innovation of offense grows with these centers and they become extremely mobile, like teams are winning. So I really think the direction is moving away from players like Zach Edey.
I like that, Miles, but I think it's hard to find bigs that are 7'4" and can move like Wemby and Chet. That's rare to find. These guys are like demigods of the NBA, because to move at that size, like, and be able to dribble, shoot like that is just unheard of. We haven't seen that until today's NBA. And another thing I wanted to point out was Kevin was talking about the 3-point shooting with bigs. You see that now a lot, and Zach Edey, he hasn't really had a 3-point shot. I think he's 1 for 2 in the season, 50% from 3. And Bam Adebayo was saying, I literally woke up one day and was like, I'm going to shoot threes today. So we're starting to see these NBA centers starting to take threes more, and that's going to play into the offenses. And I think NBA teams are looking for that. They want these bigs to be able to stretch the floor.
Looking at Edey's mechanics, I'm not sure that a jump shot is in his near future.
I honestly do think that Zach Edey should be a lottery pick, and he does deserve it. I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate here, but I think if you're a GM or if you're someone scouting him, you would be dumb not to show interest, just because of purely his efficiency, right? It is not easy to make a bucket, in my opinion, right? I don't know how it is, but I would assume that it's not easy to get a bucket and to let it drop in a college basketball game, let alone March Madness, right? But he's doing it, and he's doing it at a rate that's absolutely ridiculous, right? Some guys drop 30 points once in the March Madness tournament. Sometimes they drop it twice, but rarely do you see them averaging as many points as Edey is. I get the concern with Edey. His ball is not pretty, and there is a lot of people on TikTok and on Instagram that say like watching Purdue basketball is terrible. But the truth is that like when I think of Nikola Jokic, right, and when I saw him in person, he didn't get a lot of his shots to fall the first time, but the important part was that he did get them to fall. If it wasn't off of a rebound, or a sloppy shot, he was still getting that bucket to drop. So to me, that is an important factor, especially it should be an important factor to any NBA team. So for that reason, I would just say Zach Edey is probably going to be, at the very least, a good addition to whatever team he's on. I don't think it would be a bad decision to pick him up.
Yes, the one thing I would add is against Tennessee, he took over 20 free throws. And I do agree. I am not saying it is an easy task to score in March Madness, but I think it's going to be far harder to score in the NBA when the opposing team's centers and are much more disciplined and they understand the game better to not have to foul him so much. The thing about watching Zach Edey in college, not to dive too deep into college ball, is whatever team he plays, you can guarantee their starting center, their starting forwards, and most likely their backup center is going to get in foul trouble. And it's just because he's too big. He's too big for that level of ball. And I'm not saying he can't be successful at the next level, but it's going to be difficult when most NBA centers, especially the traditional ones, are roughly his size and more disciplined with hands.
The college refs also have no idea how to officiate a basketball game with Zach Edey playing in it. I don't think he's going to be able to score over Embiid.
Final thoughts on Zach Edey?
I said it once about an Indiana center. I'll say it again. I think that whatever team picks him up he'll be in good hands, and I think that in the next few years you'll see him prosper and he'll be successful. That's my opinion.
I think that if Purdue wins the national championship, I think his draft stock's gonna go up, and I think you just gotta give him time to adjust to the league and see how he truly pans out.
Yeah, I think I'll just throw one in. I think he has a lot of potential. I think I've heard he's a sponge on and off the court, very smart, understands the game, willing to learn, very disciplined player. I know that Steven Adams is most likely going to come off the bench for the Rockets. I could see Zach Edey in a similar role. I think UConn's head coach hyped him up a little too much here.
I agree. A sponge is a great analogy.
I think he'll be a
Because-
starter. I was just going to say I think he'll be a starter.